few residents asked me why I voted against this year's budget, and I thought I would take time at this meeting to explain. I'll start by noting a very important fact. Your municipal taxes constitute approximately 10% of your total property tax bill. Almost 90% of your property tax bill goes to the East Amwell Township School, Hunterdon Central, County, and certain other uses. Thus, almost 90% of your property tax bill is outside of the control of this township committee. As a practical matter, small increases or decreases in our township budget have a negligible impact on your property tax bill. For example, if your annual property tax bill is $10,000, 10% of that amount, or $1,000, is your municipal taxes. If your municipal taxes increase by 3%, your property tax bill will increase by $30 from $10,000 to $10,030. That said, I believe and have said repeatedly that it's critically important that this township committee strive to offer our residents the best possible service at the lowest possible cost. In other words, we must act in a fiscally responsible manner. With this background in mind, I'll now discuss some of the facts regarding the budget my four colleagues on the Township Committee approved last month at our June Township Committee meeting. In January 2018, control of this Township Committee shifted from an organization that had controlled the Township Committee for many years to a group of 4 Republicans consisting of me, Kevin Ostrander, Pete Miller, and Tim Matthews.
Can I make a motion to continue with the agenda here? I don't know where this is.
You can, but I'll just read this during the open public session. So
But I don't understand why it's important for you to make this statement now.
because I'm the mayor, and I
We know
voted
that.
against the building,
You make
the
that clear.
budget, and the residents. If you don't want me to read it now, John, I'll read it during the open public, and if you interrupt, you'll be violating my First Amendment rights. So you tell me when you want me to do it.
No, you go ahead, Mayor. You like this.
Okay, I'll continue. In January 2018, control of this Township Committee shifted from an organization that had controlled the Township Committee for many years to a group of 4 Republicans, consisting of me, Kevin Ostrander, Pete Miller, and Tim Matthews. During our respective campaigns, the 4 of us made certain promises to the residents, including 1, we would run a fiscally responsible government. 2, we would run an open and transparent government that puts the interest of the residents first. And 3, that we would initiate a capital improvement program aimed at fixing our badly neglected roads and replacing our DPW's antiquated equipment. We felt that each of these objectives was critically important. During our first year as a majority, 2018, the 4 of us made very significant cuts in our municipal budget. For example, we eliminated the township administrator position, saving the residents of East Amwell over $70,000, which equaled about 5% of the township's operating budget. We merged our planning board and zoning board of adjustments, saving the township over $20,000, and we eliminated or cut a host of other expenses. With these savings, we did 2 things in 2018. First, we cut the residents' municipal tax bill by 5%. Second, we started the capital improvements program I described earlier. At that time in 2018, Margaret, our CFO, cautioned us about cutting the municipal tax bill by 5%. She was concerned that such a large cut in terms of percentage would someday come back to haunt us, particularly if the township incurred a significant unanticipated expense, or if for some reason, such as a downturn in the economy, our revenue declined. We did not follow Margaret's advice, mainly because one of the 4 of us, I'll call him Mr. Big Splash, felt it was very important that in our first year as a majority, we make a quote-unquote big splash. He believed that a 5% cut in our municipal tax bill would make the 4 of us look really smart. The other 3 of us went along with Mr. Big Splash. I did so out of respect for his seniority and my belief at that time that he understood much better than I did the ramifications of this tax cut. In retrospect, I believe Margaret was right regarding the fiscal prudence, or lack thereof, of the 5% tax cut. I'll explain why shortly. I also also now believe that Mr. Big Splash was simply looking to make a big splash politically and neither understood nor particularly cared about the ramifications of this tax cut. I will also point out that while the 5% cut in our municipal taxes seems significant and sounds great in campaign literature, it did not reduce the average resident's overall property taxes by much because, as I noted earlier, our municipal taxes are only 10% of your overall property tax bill. In the next 2 years, 2019 and 2020, we kept our municipal budget flat. No increase or decrease in our municipal taxes. This was very, very hard for 3 reasons. First, in 2018, we cut the costs to the bone. Thus, there wasn't much room to make significant additional cuts. Second, during 2019 and 2020, a number of our costs increased. As you know, prices tend to go up, not go down. Finally, by cutting property taxes by 5% in 2018, we reduced our property tax revenue not only in 2018, but also in future years. To illustrate, if the tax revenue you raise is $100, and you cut that tax revenue in 2018 by 5% to $95, you only have $95 in each year going forward to cover all your expenses. With a budget that's cut to the bone, any future increases in expenses, which invariably will occur, will result in a tax increase. Accordingly, by 2020, I realized that Margaret's advice in 2018 regarding our 5% tax cut, our big splash, likely was right. It was a mistake, and it was done for the wrong reason. Now we get to this year, 2021. Mark Castellano and I, along with Krista and our DPW supervisor, Jason Silverthorne, had several long, very detailed meetings with Margaret during the latter part of 2020 and the early part of 2021, where we went through drafts of the 2021 budget. Additionally, Mark and I had several discussions between ourselves regarding various aspects of the 2021 budget. The initial draft of the 2021 budget, generated, I believe, in early December of 2020, showed an increase in our municipal taxes of over 6%, attributed largely to the decline in revenue resulting from COVID and the federal government's interest rate policies in response to COVID. I discussed this decline in revenue in detail in prior township committee meetings. By mid-March of this year, with a great deal of effort, the 5 of us, Mark, Krista, Jason, Margaret, and me, generated a budget that had a 2.37% tax increase, or an increase of about $18 for the average resident. I believe the other 4 of us viewed this as a great accomplishment. We managed to cut the potential tax increase by over 60% in a budget that was bare bones to begin with. And while none of us was happy about a 2.37% increase, or an $18 increase for the year, or about $1.50 per month, none of us viewed it as too onerous. In the course of getting to this point, we upset some of our committees because we had to say no to a number of their funding requests. We also upset certain employees who felt that they were entitled to pay increases greater than the annual 2% cost of living increase that we give our employees. In any event, at that point, we were done with the 2021 budget. All 5 of us, Margaret, Krista, Jason, Mark, and me, were signed off on it. We did the best we could, and I believe we struck the right balance between, on the one hand, minimizing taxes, and on the other hand, providing important services to our residents and maintaining our infrastructure, particularly our roads. At our April 8, 2021 Township Committee meeting, my fellow Township Committee member, Tara Ramsey, described quite accurately, in my view, our budget with the 2.37% increase as follows. John and I visited with Margaret for about an hour a few weeks ago when we went through the budget line by line. Thank you again for spending time for us, Margaret. It was time well spent. I think the reality is we have a very lean budget. I think the Township Committee, pre-us, has done an excellent job of leaning this thing out with Margaret's leadership, of leaning this thing out as best as possible. We did look at the historic year over year and some of the other areas where we've decreased year over year in certain line items to the point where, I think, Rick, you said, there's no more else to come out of this budget. The reality is already what you stated. We have revenue we haven't been able to realize because of COVID. That's the reality. It's not just in East Amwell, it's happening elsewhere. So I think you guys have done a great job thus far. This is the reality that we've been handed, and it sounds like we may not be getting the federal aid in time, and we can't use it to lower taxes anyway. Clearly, Tara was in agreement with our very lean budget. This very lean budget was on the agenda for a public hearing and passage at our May Township Committee meeting. It was very important that we pass the budget in May. Margaret made it clear to us that deferring passing the budget beyond the May meeting would have significant adverse ramifications to the township, which I'll discuss later. Did we pass the very lean budget at our May meeting? No, we did not. Sadly, my fellow township committee members decided to put politics ahead of fiscal responsibility in the best interest of the residents. They decided that for political reasons they needed to make another big splash. Here's why. Until recently, my fellow township committee members anticipated that we'd have no trouble in this November's election maintaining our 5-0 control over this township committee. In our past 4 elections, our candidates, including myself, have won by sizable margins. In fact, one of my fellow township committee members believed that our opponents might not even run a candidate in 2021. However, as it turns out, not long before our May Township Committee meeting, our opponents denounced their candidate for Township Committee in this November's election, and she is a very strong candidate. Indeed, she has strong credentials, and best I can tell, may bring a lot to the table. Panicked by the prospect of losing a seat this November, and with the encouragement of one, Chris Sobieski, who earlier this year told me he would not accept any tax increase in the year he was running for re-election, and 2, Mr. Big Splash, who was the former Township Committee member who led the charge in 2018 for the 5% tax cut, my fellow Township Committee members decided that we can't have any tax increase in 2021, not 1 cent. In their view, doing so will give their opponent fodder for this November's campaign, thereby jeopardizing our 5-0 majority. In an effort to make a big splash, my fellow Township Committee members put approval of our budget on hold and began pressuring our CFO to perform budget voodoo in order to avoid any tax increase. Among other things, they wanted to use our already thin surplus to avoid the tax increase. Unable to convince our CFO, our gatekeeper, to eat into our surplus, my fellow Township Committee members decided to make a big splash by taking money from the capital improvements component of our budget. The money needed to keep our roads safe and to ensure that our DPW has the equipment it needs to do its job. Bear in mind, they're doing this to avoid a tax increase that amounts to $18 for the average resident, or $1.50 per month. Not only is this irresponsible, but using the budget to achieve a political objective is the exact tactic we criticized our predecessors for in the 2017 election, the election, as I noted earlier, in which we obtained control over this Township Committee. Moreover, by deferring approval of our budget beyond May, we now cannot chip seal this year 2 roads, Rainbow Hill and Losee, that were targeted to be done this year. As a result, these roads will continue to degrade, perhaps significantly if we have a harsh winter. We also have to defer certain road repairs and the purchase of our chipper. In substance, this is the exact same type of fiscal irresponsibility that led to the collapse of the condominium building in Seaside, Florida. There, to avoid imposing a capital improvement surcharge on residents of that building, which likely would not have been significant if done in increments and started years ago, the building's condo board allowed the building to deteriorate to the point where a portion of the building collapsed. In sum, what I'm witnessing here is the same thing I witnessed in 2018, using our municipal budget to achieve a political objective without regard to the advice of our CFO and without regard to what's in the best interest of our residents. I naively did nothing about that in 2018. I will not repeat that mistake in 2021. I am greatly disappointed and am downright sickened by what's going on here. My colleagues are betting that most residents won't realize, 1, the fiscal irresponsibility of this decision, and 2, that their big splash in 2021 amounts to $18 for the average resident, and thus is more like dropping a pebble in a pond. No doubt my colleagues will plaster this big splash all over Chris's campaign literature this fall. I'm also very concerned that this is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of shenanigans by this township committee. You know the old saying that absolute power corrupts absolutely. Rest assured, however, that I will not give up the promise that I made to the residents of doing everything in my power to shine light on the workings of our township committee, expose instances where elected officials attempt to abuse their power to further their own self-interests, and to have a township committee that is honest, has integrity, and puts the interest of residents above all else. I anticipate that my fellow township committee members will make great efforts to cancel me, as was just evidenced a few minutes ago, and have confidence that they will fail miserably in that endeavor. That's why I voted against the 2021 budget. Thank you. Now I will honor John's request and move on.
I have nothing to say, Mr. Mayor, except I will speak for myself. I did not feel comfortable voting for a tax increase in the middle of a pandemic. Some people are not millionaires like you are. I don't care if it's a penny, a dime, or a quarter. Folks work hard for their money, and you have to respect that. I don't care if it's 10% of a budget or 90% of a budget. I represent the people that elected me, and I'm sorry you're a sore loser. You lost 4-1. I've got nothing else to say.
I'm sure if you were on the condo board of the Seaside condo, you'd be making the same speech, and then when the building fell down, what would you be saying? I have the floor.
I don't care
have
about
the
the
floor.
You talk too much.
You know what, John? I have the floor.
You know what?
You don't like what I have to say.
You like to grandstand, Mr. Mayor.
You know, John, when I was supporting you during your campaign, you never made these comments, but now that I'm pointing out the slime.
I had no idea, Mr. Mayor, that you were so egotistical. But that being said, I'd like to make a motion to continue with the agenda.
One of the powers the mayor has in a township form of government is the presiding over the meeting. So the mayor does have the floor as the mayor. You can make a motion in that regard, it can be voted on, but the mayor has the floor as the mayor. And we don't always have to agree, but we should all have some, remind ourselves of being civil. There is trial and error.
17 minutes so far.
I have nothing else to say at this point. I've said what I have to say.
I just find it interesting that in that whole speech also, Rick, you did not apologize when, I think it was the meeting right before Memorial Day, where John read a statement that we all apologized on behalf of the Township Committee for the shenanigans that took place in that meeting, and that we were embarrassed on behalf of the Township Committee. And we apologized to the community for that, and you said nothing. And in the past 17 minutes that you've been speaking, you not once apologized for your behavior when Chris did. So I just want that to be on the record, that I find that very interesting as well. And I don't want to talk about this anymore. So can we please move on?
My behavior
It's not.
is always focused on the best interest of the residents and pointing out when people on the township committee are doing slimy things, and I will never, ever apologize for that behavior.
I think that's pretty telling about your character.
It absolutely is telling about my character. Honesty, integrity, being a good public servant. Yes, it is very telling about my character.
That's your
I
opinion.
wish you shared that character. Okay.
Let's move on.
I think I do, actually, for the record.
I think you as well.
Thank you, John.
Okay. Next, we move on to acknowledgements by the mayor. I'd like to do 3 this evening.